A storm raged outside the grand iron gates of the Blackwood Manor, but it was nothing compared to the tempest brewing inside. Lena, 7 months pregnant and trembling, clutched a single, hastily packed bag. The man she loved, her husband, Sebastian, stood before her, his face a mask of cold fury. "Get her out!" he hissed, his voice echoing in the marble foyer that had been her home. "I never want to see you or that thing you're carrying again." He cast her out into the unforgiving night, penniless and abandoned. But what Sebastian Montgomery didn't know was that betrayal works in mysterious ways, and the person he trusted most in the world was about to orchestrate the ultimate reversal of fortune. The Montgomery fortune was old, the kind of wealth that whispered through the halls of Ivy League universities and echoed in the boardrooms of Wall Street. It wasn't loud or flashy. It was foundational, woven into the very fabric of New York's high society. Blackwood Manor, a sprawling stone estate overlooking the Hudson River, was its crown jewel. For the past 2 years, it had been Lena Petrov's home. For the past 6 hours, it had been her prison. She met Sebastian Montgomery during a charity gala she was helping to cater. He was the golden heir, impossibly handsome, with a smile that could disarm world leaders. She was a culinary student with aspirations and a spirit that shone brighter than the ballroom's crystal chandeliers. He was charmed by her lack of pretense. She was swept away by a fairy tale she never thought she'd star in. Their whirlwind romance culminated in a wedding that was the talk of the season. Lena, initially intimidated by the sheer scale of his world, found her footing with a quiet grace that surprised many, including Sebastian's formidable mother, Catherine Montgomery. Catherine, the matriarch who held the family's legacy with a velvet-gloved but iron fist, saw in Lena a strength and integrity she feared her own son lacked. But fairy tales have a way of souring. As Sebastian's 30s approached, the pressure to helm Montgomery Industries mounted. His father, the late Robert Montgomery, had been a titan of industry, a brilliant and decisive man. Sebastian, for all his charm, struggled to fill those enormous shoes. A recent high-stakes merger with a German tech firm, a deal he had personally championed, was teetering on the brink of collapse. The stress gnawed at him, twisting his charm into impatience and his confidence into paranoia. The cracks in their marriage began as hairline fractures, a snapped retort over dinner, a cancelled date night for yet another urgent meeting. He started spending more time with his sister Beatrice, a woman who wore the Montgomery name like armor, and viewed Lena as a temporary, pretty distraction. Beatrice had never approved of the marriage, often making thinly veiled comments about Lena's humble origins. The catalyst for the final shattering blow came in the form of an anonymous email. It arrived in Sebastian's inbox on a Tuesday afternoon, a day when everything else was already going wrong. The German deal had hit a major snag. A single grainy photo was attached. It showed Lena months ago having lunch on a park bench with a male friend from her culinary school days. They were laughing heads close together. The accompanying text was poison expertly crafted to exploit his deepest insecurities. Does the heir to the Montgomery fortune know who his wife really entertains? Be careful, the legacy you think you're building isn't someone else's. Under normal circumstances, Sebastian might have laughed it off. But he wasn't normal. He was a man drowning in professional failure, desperate for a target to blame. The paranoia that had been simmering within him boiled over. He didn't see an innocent lunch. He saw betrayal. He didn't see his pregnant wife. He saw a schemer who had trapped him. He waited until dinner. The storm that had been threatening all day finally broke rain lashing against the panoramic windows of the dining room. Lena had prepared his favorite meal, coq au vin, a peace offering for the distance that had grown between them. He didn't touch it. He just stared at her, his eyes cold and distant. "Is everything all right, Seb?" she asked, her hand instinctively going to her swollen belly. The baby was kicking a gentle rhythmic tap against her palm. "I know, Lena," he said, his voice dangerously low. "Know what?" she asked, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. He slid his phone across the polished mahogany table. The screen glowed with the damning photo and text. Lena's breath hitched. "Seb, that's David. From school. This was months ago. We were just catching up." "Were you catching up when you got pregnant too?" The question was a physical blow. The air left Lena's lungs. "What?" she whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. "How can you even ask that? It all makes sense now." He continued, standing up and beginning to pace his movements, agitated feral. "The timing of it all. You secure the Montgomery name, then you secure your future with a child that probably isn't even mine." Tears streamed down Lena's face, hot and furious. "You know that's not true. This is our baby, Sebastian. Ours. I have never, ever been unfaithful to you." "Lies," he roared, slamming his hand on the table. The crystal glasses jumped, and a water goblet tipped over its contents, spreading like a dark stain on the white linen. "My sister was right about you all along. You're a leech, a gold digger, who saw an easy mark." Every word was a shard of glass tearing her apart. This wasn't the man she loved. This was a monster wearing his face. "This is insane," she sobbed. "This is about the merger, isn't it? You're failing, so you're lashing out at me." His face went pale with rage. He had hit a nerve. "The merger has nothing to do with your infidelity." He pointed a trembling finger towards the door. "I want you out of my house, now." "Your house?" Lena choked out a laugh that was more of a sob. "This is my home, Sebastian. I'm your wife. I am carrying your child. You are carrying a burden I no longer want," he said, the cruelty in his voice absolute. "Beatrice is on her way over. She'll watch you pack a bag. The rest of your things will be sent to wherever it is people like you go." "Sebastian, please," she begged, rising from her chair and approaching him. "Don't do this. Don't let them poison you against us. Think about our baby." He flinched away from her touch as if she were diseased. "Don't you dare use that thing to manipulate me. Pack your bag. I'll call security to escort you out." He turned and strode out of the room, leaving Lena standing amidst the ruins of their dinner, the ruins of their life. Beatrice arrived 20 minutes later, her expression a mixture of triumph and disdain. She stood arms crossed in the doorway of their master suite as Lena, numb with shock and grief, threw a few essential items into a duffel bag. She took her wallet, her phone, the small ultrasound photo she kept on her nightstand, and the antique silver locket her own mother had given her. "Try not to take any of the family heirlooms on your way out," Beatrice sneered. Lena didn't grace her with a response. With as much dignity as she could muster, she walked down the grand, curving staircase, past the ancestral portraits, whose eyes seemed to follow her with silent judgment. Sebastian was waiting by the main door. His arms crossed his face, unreadable. 2 uniformed security guards stood impassively behind him. The rain was a torrential downpour now. As the heavy oak door swung open, a blast of wind and water hit her. "Get out!" Sebastian repeated his voice, devoid of all emotion. Lena looked at him one last time, her eyes pleading for a flicker of the man she married. She found none. With a broken heart, she stepped out of the warmth and light of Blackwood Manor and into the cold, raging storm of the night. The massive door clicked shut behind her, the sound of the deadbolt sliding into place, sealing her fate. The cold rain soaked through Lena's thin cardigan in seconds, plastering her hair to her face and sending a deep, penetrating chill into her bones. She stood on the bluestone steps of the manor, the place where she had posed for wedding photos just 2 years ago, now a symbol of her exile. The perfectly manicured lawns, the ancient oak trees, the distant glimmer of the Hudson River. It all felt like a scene from someone else's life. Her first instinct was a wave of pure, paralyzing panic. She was 7 months pregnant with no car, no cash beyond the $200 in her wallet, and nowhere to go. Her phone was in her bag. But who could she call? Her parents were retired and living in a small condo in Florida, in no position to help. Her mind raced, sorting through a mental Rolodex of friends, most of whom were now their friends, intertwined with Sebastian's world. Contacting them would be a betrayal in his eyes, not that it mattered anymore. Then she remembered Chloe. Chloe Davis was her rock. They had met in the trenches of culinary school, bonding over third-degree burns and the stress of a perfect soufflé. Chloe was a freelance photographer now, scrappy, independent, and fiercely loyal. She lived in a tiny but vibrant apartment in Brooklyn, a world away from the sterile opulence of Blackwood Manor. Shivering, Lena fumbled for her phone, her fingers numb and clumsy. She shielded the screen from the rain and found Chloe's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Lena's hope began to falter. It was past 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. Lena, is that you? It sounds like you're in a hurricane. Relief washed over Lena so intensely her knees felt weak. Chloe, she sobbed the single word carrying all her pain and fear. Can you come get it? Get me? Get you from where? What's wrong? Are you okay? Is the baby okay? The questions tumbled out, laced with immediate concern. I'm at the manor. Sebastian, he kicked me out. The words sounded absurd even to her own ears. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then Chloe's voice returned, sharp and clear. That son of a bitch. Don't move. I'm on my way. I'll be there in 45 minutes, maybe an hour with this weather. Can you get somewhere dry? Is there a gatehouse or something? I'm on the front steps, Lena said, her voice trembling. I don't think I'm allowed anywhere else. Okay, honey, just stay strong for me. I'm coming. The line went dead. 45 minutes. It felt like a lifetime. Lena huddled under the small portico, trying to shield her belly from the wind. Each gust felt like a personal attack. The baby, sensing her distress, was still and quiet, a fact that sent a fresh wave of fear through her. She wrapped her arms around her stomach, whispering soft reassurances, not just for the child, but for herself. She thought back over the evening, replaying the argument in a torturous loop. The coldness in Sebastian's eyes, the triumphant smirk on Beatrice's face. The accusation was so vile, so baseless, it defied logic. How could he believe it? How could the man who had vowed to love and protect her turn on her so viciously? She realized with a sickening certainty that it was never about the photo. The photo was just an excuse. He was looking for a scapegoat for his own failures, and she, the outsider, was the easiest target. The minutes crawled by. Headlights occasionally swept across the long, winding driveway, but they were all residents of the exclusive enclave, passing by without a second glance at the lone, drenched figure on the Montgomerys' doorstep. Lena felt invisible, erased. Finally, the familiar headlights of Chloe's beat-up Subaru hatchback appeared at the far end of the drive. The car chugged its way up the incline, looking comically out of place in front of the grand mansion. The moment Chloe pulled up, the passenger door flew open. "Get in! Get in!" Chloe yelled over the storm. Lena scrambled into the car, dragging her wet bag with her. She collapsed into the seat, shaking uncontrollably from cold and shock. Chloe immediately cranked up the heat and wrapped a thick, dry blanket she'd brought from the back seat around Lena's shoulders. "Oh, Lena," Chloe said, her voice soft with pity, as she took in her friend's tear-streaked face and drenched clothes. "What did he do?" "The dam broke." Lena told her everything, the words tumbling out between ragged sobs. The stress of the merger, Beatrice's constant undermining the anonymous email, the cruel accusation, the final brutal command to get out. Chloe listened, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. Her expression hardened from concern to pure, unadulterated rage. "He accused you of cheating. While you're carrying his child, I'm going to kill him. I'm not kidding. I will commit actual premeditated murder." "It's not worth it," Lena whispered, though the ferocity of Chloe's loyalty was a small, warm spark in the vast coldness of her heart. "What are you going to do?" Chloe asked, her voice softening again as she navigated the slick roads away from the opulent prison Lena had called home. "I don't know," Lena admitted. "I have nothing, Chloe. My bank account is a joint one with him. He'll freeze it. My name isn't on the deed to the house or on any of the cars. I have a degree, but I haven't worked in 2 years. I'm 7 months pregnant. Who's going to hire me? You'll stay with me." Chloe said the statement, leaving no room for argument. "My place is a shoebox, but the couch is surprisingly comfortable, and the baby won't care about square footage as long as its mom is safe. We'll figure it out. Together." Tears filled Lena's eyes again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. They drove in silence for a while, the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers, a hypnotic comfort. As they crossed the bridge into the vibrant, chaotic world of Brooklyn, the glittering skyline of Manhattan shone behind them. Lena looked back at it, at the distant, unseen point where Blackwood Manor stood. It looked like a different planet. She had been so enamored with that world, so desperate to fit in, that she hadn't realized the gilded cage was closing around her until it was too late. Chloe's apartment was exactly as she remembered, small, cluttered with photography equipment and books, but warm and alive. A half-finished puzzle was on the coffee table, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and cinnamon. It felt more like home than the mansion ever had. Chloe helped her out of her wet clothes, gave her a set of dry, oversized pajamas, and made her a cup of chamomile tea. As Lena sat on the couch, wrapped in another blanket, the baby finally gave a reassuring kick. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "One more person to call," Lena said, her voice still hoarse. "Who?" "Catherine," Lena said. "Sebastian's mother. She was always kind to me. I need to tell her. I don't want her to hear his twisted version of the story first." Chloe nodded. "Good idea. But get some sleep first. You've been through hell. Whatever happens tomorrow, you'll face it with a clear head." Lena agreed, though she knew sleep would be a long time coming. Curled on Chloe's couch, with the sounds of the city and the storm outside, she felt the full weight of her situation crash down on her. She had lost her husband, her home, her security. All she had left was a small bag of belongings, a fiercely loyal friend, and the unborn child who was both the source of her current crisis and her only reason to fight for a future. Catherine Montgomery was a creature of habit. Every morning she rose at precisely 6:00 a.m., read the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal cover to cover, and then took a call from the family's chief financial advisor. She managed the vast Montgomery fortune, not with the swashbuckling bravado of her late husband Robert, or the entitled recklessness of her son Sebastian, but with a quiet surgical precision. She saw the world as a complex chessboard, and she was always 10 moves ahead. When her private line rang at 7:30 a.m., she was already in her home office, a magnificent book-lined room in her Upper East Side penthouse. She glanced at the caller ID Beatrice. Catherine felt a familiar flicker of weariness. A call from her daughter this early rarely meant good news. "Mother." Beatrice began, her voice brimming with a poorly concealed glee that immediately set Catherine on edge. "I have some rather significant family news." "Do you, dear?" Catherine replied, her tone cool and even. She took a sip of her tea. "It's about Sebastian and Lena. They had a terrible fight last night. It turns out Lena has been unfaithful. Sebastian discovered the truth and, well, he did what had to be done. He threw her out." Catherine placed her teacup down so gently it didn't make a sound. Her mind, however, was racing. Unfaithful Lena. It was the most preposterous thing she had ever heard. Lena was many things. Kind, resilient, perhaps a bit naive, but she was not deceitful. Catherine knew character when she saw it. It was the bedrock of her entire life's philosophy. "He threw her out," Catherine repeated, her voice betraying nothing. "His pregnant wife, out of the house, in the middle of that storm. He had no choice," Beatrice insisted. "The betrayal was immense. He was heartbroken. He found evidence. She was cheating on him, and there's no telling who the baby's father really is." Catherine's eyes narrowed. Evidence. She knew her son. Sebastian was impulsive and proud, a dangerous combination. When cornered, especially professionally, he would thrash about seeking to place blame anywhere but on himself. The German merger was a disaster of his own, making a fact she was well aware of. This reeked of misdirection. "And where is Lena now?" Catherine asked calmly. "I have no idea. He just told her to leave. It's for the best, Mother. She was never one of us. Now Sebastian can finally get his head straight and focus on what's important." What's important? To Beatrice, that meant money, status, and bloodlines. To Catherine, it meant legacy honor and the future of the family, a future currently growing inside the very woman her son had just exiled. "Thank you for informing me, Beatrice," Catherine said, the chill in her voice now unmistakable. "I will handle this." She hung up before Beatrice could reply. For a long moment she sat in perfect stillness, her manicured fingers steepled before her. She thought of her late husband, Robert. He had adored Sebastian, but he had never been blind to his son's flaws. Robert had been the architect of their empire, a man who valued loyalty and integrity above all else. He had seen the potential for recklessness in Sebastian, the same entitled arrogance that had been the downfall of so many other great families. It was why he had structured his will the way he had. Catherine picked up the phone again and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Alistair Finch, please." "It's Catherine Montgomery calling." Alistair Finch had been the Montgomery family's legal counsel for 40 years. He was discreet, brilliant, and utterly devoted to the vision Robert Montgomery had laid out. "Catherine," Alistair's voice came on the line, warm and professional. "To what do I owe the pleasure this early? Alistair, I need you to pull the file on Blackwood Manor. Specifically, the codicil Robert added to the trust 8 years ago. The family preservation clause." There was a brief pause. "Of course, Catherine. Is there a problem?" "My son has just thrown his pregnant wife out of the house based on an unsubstantiated claim of infidelity," Catherine stated flatly. "He has endangered the life of my grandchild and sullied the family's honor with his tantrum. Robert foresaw this kind of behavior. It's time to enact the contingency he put in place." Alistair let out a low whistle. "It is an aggressive contingency, Catherine." "Are you certain?" "Robert was not an aggressive man, Alistair. He was a strategic one. He believed the home should be a sanctuary for the family, especially for the mother of the next generation. He put that clause in place to protect the lineage from the very immaturity and foolish pride Sebastian is displaying. My son has mistaken stewardship for ownership. It's time for a correction." "I'll draw up the paperwork immediately," Alistair said. "The transfer of deed is straightforward. The trust is explicit. In the event the primary resident, Sebastian Montgomery, acts in a manner that destabilizes the family unit or endangers his legal heir full and immediate ownership of the Blackwood Manor property, reverts to the trust to be administered at your discretion. You have the full authority to transfer ownership to his legal spouse, Lena Montgomery, for the security of her and the child." "Excellent," Catherine said. "Have a courier bring the documents to my penthouse for my signature. Then have them delivered to Lena. I need to find out where she is." Just as she hung up her personal cell phone, the one she gave to only a select few buzzed. It was an unknown number. She answered with caution. "Hello." "Catherine. It's Lena." The voice was weak, strained, but unmistakable. Catherine's severe expression softened instantly. "Lena, my dear, are you all right? Where are you?" I'm okay. I'm with my friend Chloe in Brooklyn," Lena said, her voice cracking. I wanted you to know. What Sebastian said. It isn't true." "I know it isn't, my dear," Catherine said, her voice firm and reassuring. "I never believed it for a second. You are a woman of sterling character. My son, on the other hand, is a fool, and he is about to learn a very hard lesson about the consequences of his actions." Lena was taken aback by the force of Catherine's conviction. "What do you mean? You just stay put and rest. You and the baby are my only priority right now. Someone will be arriving later today with some documents for you. Do not go back to the manor. Do not contact Sebastian. Just trust me. Can you do that?" Lena, who had expected a lecture, or at best a sympathetic but distant platitude, was overwhelmed. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I can trust you." "Good," Catherine said. "Now tell me, what is this friend's address?" After getting the details, Catherine hung up and took a deep breath. The pieces were in motion. This wasn't about punishment, not entirely. It was about restoration. It was about honoring her husband's wishes. It was about protecting the future. Sebastian had treated his wife and unborn child as disposable. Catherine was about to show him and the world that they were in fact the most valuable assets the Montgomery family had. She walked over to the window, looking out over the city. A plan was forming not just for the house, but for everything. This was no longer just Sebastian's mess to fix. It was a crisis that required the steady hand of the true head of the family. Sebastian woke up with a pounding headache and a sour taste in his mouth. The adrenaline of the previous night's confrontation had worn off, leaving behind a hollow, unsettling quiet in the cavernous manor. He had expected to feel a sense of relief, of righteous victory. Instead, he just felt empty. He wandered downstairs. The remnants of last night's dinner had been cleared away, but the ghost of the argument lingered in the air. He poured himself a cup of coffee, his movements sluggish. Beatrice was already in the breakfast nook, scrolling through her phone with a smug look on her face. "Good morning," she said brightly. "The house already feels lighter, doesn't it? No more charity case walking the halls." Sebastian didn't answer. He stared out the window at the rain-washed grounds. He kept seeing Lena's face, the utter shock and hurt in her eyes. A sliver of doubt, small but sharp, pierced through his anger. Had he been too rash? The anonymous email. It was so convenient, so perfectly timed with his professional anxieties. "Mother called," Beatrice said, interrupting his thoughts. "She knows. I told her you finally did the right thing." "What did she say?" Sebastian asked, a knot of unease forming in his stomach. His mother's approval was something he still craved, a holdover from a childhood spent in his father's long shadow. "She was quiet. You know how she is. Said she'd handle it." Beatrice shrugged. "Probably just needs to get the lawyers to formally cut Lena off from the family accounts. Good riddance." Just then the doorbell chimed. A moment later the butler, a man who had served the family for 30 years, appeared in the doorway looking flustered. "Mrs. Montgomery is here, sir," he announced. Sebastian and Beatrice exchanged a look. Their mother rarely visited the manor unannounced. Catherine swept into the room, her presence immediately commanding all the air. She was dressed impeccably, in a charcoal grey suit, her silver hair styled perfectly. She was not alone. Behind her was Alistair Finch, the family lawyer, holding a leather briefcase. "Mother," Sebastian said, standing up. "What is this?" Catherine didn't look at him. Her gaze swept the room, cold and appraising. "Beatrice, what are you doing here? This is not your home." Beatrice scoffed. "I was just supporting my brother through a difficult time." "You were fanning the flames of his worst instincts, as you always do," Catherine replied icily. "Your presence here is no longer required. Leave." The command was so absolute that Beatrice for once was speechless. She looked to Sebastian for support, but he was staring at his mother, dumbfounded. With a huff, Beatrice grabbed her purse and stormed out, shooting a venomous glare at Alistair Finch as she passed. Catherine finally turned her steely gaze to her son. "Sebastian, you have committed a grievous error. You have behaved not like a Montgomery, but like a common brute. You have dishonored your wife, endangered your heir, and brought shame upon this family's name." "Mother, you don't understand," Sebastian stammered. "She betrayed me. I have proof. You have an anonymous email, a tool for cowards and manipulators," Catherine countered, her voice sharp as a razor. "You didn't seek the truth. You sought a scapegoat for your own professional inadequacies. Your father would be ashamed." The mention of his father struck Sebastian like a physical blow. He staggered back a step. "That's not fair." "What is not fair," Catherine said, stepping closer, "is casting your pregnant wife out into a storm because your ego is bruised. Blackwood Manor has been the heart of this family for generations. It is a place of sanctuary, of legacy. Your father understood that, and he understood you." Alistair Finch stepped forward and opened his briefcase, retrieving a thick document bound in a blue cover. He placed it on the breakfast table. "What is that?" Sebastian asked, his voice barely a whisper. "This," Alistair said, "is a legal transfer of deed. As per the Family Preservation Clause of the Robert Montgomery Trust, your actions last night constituted a fundamental breach of your duties as steward of this property." Your mother, as the executor of the trust, has enacted the contingency." Sebastian stared at him blankly, the legal jargon failing to compute. "What are you talking about?" Catherine's voice was devoid of all emotion. "I am talking about the fact that you no longer own this house, Sebastian. As of 10 o'clock this morning, you are no longer the master of Blackwood Manor. You are a guest." Sebastian's world tilted on its axis. He laughed a short, sharp, disbelieving sound. "That's impossible. This house is mine." "It was never truly yours to begin with," Catherine said. "It was entrusted to you, a trust which you have now broken. Alistair, if you would." Alistair cleared his throat. "The clause is quite clear. In the event of your acting in a manner detrimental to the well-being of your legal spouse and heir ownership reverts to the trust to be reassigned to ensure their security. As such, Catherine has instructed me to execute the transfer. The new sole owner of Blackwood Manor is Lena Montgomery." Silence. The only sound was the frantic pounding of blood in Sebastian's ears. He looked from his mother's implacable face to the legal document on the table and back again. It was a joke. It had to be a joke. You gave my house to her." He choked out the words laced with disbelief and fury. "To the woman who cheated on me. I gave the family home to the mother of my grandchild," Catherine corrected him, "to ensure she and the baby have the safety and stability that you so recklessly stripped from them. You have 24 hours to pack a bag and vacate the premises. You may take your personal clothing, your car, and the contents of your private bank account. Everything else stays. It belongs to Lena now." As if on cue, a car crunched on the gravel driveway outside. Not a sleek town car, but a battered Subaru. A few moments later, the front door opened. Lena walked in, flanked by a nervous-looking Chloe. She stopped dead in the entryway, her eyes wide as she took in the scene, Sebastian, pale and shaking, Catherine standing like a statue of judgment, and Alistair Finch holding the papers that represented an impossible shift in power. "Lena, my dear," Catherine said, her voice softening completely as she turned to her daughter-in-law. "Welcome home." Lena looked at Sebastian, whose face was a storm of rage, humiliation, and confusion. Then she looked at the document on the table. She looked at Catherine, who gave her a small, reassuring nod. The world that had been violently ripped from under her feet less than 24 hours ago had just been handed back to her gift-wrapped and tied with the bow of absolute authority. What is happening?" Lena whispered, her hand going to her belly. "A correction," Catherine said simply. "This is your house now, Lena. You are safe here." Sebastian finally found his voice, a raw, wounded roar. "You can't do this. This is my life. My legacy." "Your legacy is in that woman's belly," Catherine shot back, pointing at Lena, "and you threw it out in the rain. Now you will learn what it feels like to be on the outside looking in. Pack your bags, Sebastian. The clock is ticking." The 24 hours that followed were the most surreal of Lena's life. Sebastian, utterly defeated and humiliated, moved through the house like a ghost. He refused to look at Lena, his face a thunderous mask of fury. He packed 2 suitcases in silence, watched over by the same impassive security guards he had used to eject his wife. The transfer of power was absolute and brutally swift. When he finally walked out the front door and got into his Aston Martin, he didn't look back. The roar of the engine faded down the long driveway, leaving behind a profound and unsettling silence. Lena stood in the center of the grand foyer, her hand resting on the smooth, cool marble of a pedestal that had always seemed to belong to another world. Now, it was her pedestal in her house. Chloe stood beside her, looking around with wide, disbelieving eyes. I don't even know what to say, Chloe breathed. Your mother-in-law is not a woman. She's a force of nature. Catherine, who had overseen the entire transition with quiet authority, turned to Lena. The house is yours, Lena. The staff now reports to you. The household accounts have been transferred to a new account in your name only. You are in control. But why? Lena asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Why would you do this for me, against your own son? Because you are the future of this family, and he has proven himself a poor custodian of that future, Catherine said simply. My husband did not build an empire so his son could tear it down in a fit of pique, but this is only the first step. Now we find the truth. Catherine was not a woman to make idle statements. The next day she hired a team of private investigators, not brutish thugs, but discreet forensic accountants and cybersecurity experts from a top-tier corporate intelligence firm. Their target was not Lena, but the source of the poison, the anonymous email. An attack like this is rarely random, Catherine explained to Lena over tea in the sunroom, a room Lena had always loved. Sebastian was vulnerable because of the failing German deal. Someone exploited that. We need to find out who and why. While the investigators worked their magic, Lena tried to adjust to her new reality. The staff, initially wary, soon responded to her innate kindness, a stark contrast to Sebastian's often impatient commands. She insisted they call her Lena, not Mrs. Montgomery, and took the time to learn all their names. The vast, intimidating manor began to feel less like a museum and more like a potential home. Chloe stayed with her for the first few days, a comforting, grounding presence in the whirlwind. Beatrice tried to call, once her voice shrill with indignation. Lena, on Catherine's advice, didn't answer. Her number was changed the next day. She needed peace, not poison. The most difficult part was the emotional fallout. She was the mistress of a grand estate, financially secure beyond her wildest dreams. But her heart was broken. At night, in the enormous bed she had once shared with Sebastian, she felt a profound loneliness. She mourned the man she had loved, the man she now believed might never have truly existed. She clutched the ultrasound photo and whispered to her baby, promising him or her a life of love and stability no matter what. 2 weeks later, the investigators delivered their report to Catherine, who reviewed it with Lena in the manor's library. The findings were explosive. The email had been sent from a disposable encrypted account, but the experts had traced its digital ghost. It had been created on a public Wi-Fi network at a coffee shop in downtown Manhattan. By cross-referencing security footage from the cafe with visitor logs from Sebastian's office building, they found a match. The person who sent the email was Sienna Croft. The name meant nothing to Lena, but Catherine's eyes hardened. Sienna Croft, Catherine said, her voice dripping with contempt. She is a junior vice president at Sterling Nash, our biggest competitor. They were the rival bidders for the German tech firm. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The investigators had dug deeper. Sienna Croft had been seen meeting with a disgruntled junior executive from Montgomery Industries who had been working on the German deal. He had been feeding her inside information, helping her company sabotage the merger from within. The email to Sebastian wasn't personal. It was corporate espionage of the most vicious kind. Sienna had identified Sebastian's psychological weak points, his insecurity and pride, and launched a precision strike. By destabilizing his personal life, she ensured he would be too distracted and emotionally compromised to salvage the deal. It had worked perfectly. Sterling Nash had successfully reopened talks with the Germans just last week. But there was more. The investigators had also, at Catherine's insistence, discreetly obtained DNA samples from Sebastian, from a coffee cup he'd left at his new, much smaller apartment, and from Lena from a water glass. They had run a prenatal paternity test. The report was unequivocal. Probability of paternity 99.999%. Lena stared at the words, tears blurring her vision. It was a vindication she knew in her soul to be true, but seeing it in black and white was a release. She was not a liar. She was not a cheat. She was the victim of a cruel and calculated corporate ploy, and her husband had been its willing pawn. Catherine placed a hand over hers. Now we have the truth. All of it. That evening, Catherine arranged for 2 more visitors. The first was Beatrice. Shown the evidence of the corporate plot, Beatrice's smug certainty crumbled. The idea that someone had played her brother, and by extension the entire Montgomery family for fools, was a deep insult to her pride. Sienna Croft, she did all this? Beatrice asked aghast. She did, Catherine confirmed. And you and Sebastian, with your baseless accusations and snobbery, handed her the weapon. For the first time, Beatrice looked genuinely ashamed. She turned to Lena. I am sorry. She said the words clearly difficult for her. I was wrong about you. I let my prejudice blind me. I am truly sorry, Lena. It wasn't a magic wand that healed all wounds, but it was a start. The second visitor was Sebastian. He arrived looking haggard. The 2 weeks on his own, stripped of his power and privilege, had taken their toll. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a weary desperation. Catherine had him shown into the library, where she and Lena waited. Without a word, Catherine slid the investigator's report and the paternity test results across the polished table. Sebastian read them, his hands shaking. He sank into a chair, his face ashen. The full weight of his catastrophic misjudgment crashed down upon him. He had not been a righteous, wronged husband. He had been a fool, a puppet manipulated by a business rival into destroying his own family. He had accused the love of his life of the ultimate betrayal, while she was being victimized by his own professional enemy. He looked up, his eyes filled with a raw, desperate shame. He looked at Lena, truly looked at her for the first time in weeks, and saw not a traitor, but the woman he loved, the woman he had wounded beyond measure. Lena, he whispered, his voice cracking. Oh God, what have I done? The library at Blackwood Manor, once a symbol of imposing ancestral power, now felt like a courtroom where Sebastian's soul was on trial. He stared at the documents, at the undeniable proof of Lena's innocence and his own monumental folly. The silence was heavy, broken only by the quiet ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. I believed it, he said, his voice hollow with self-loathing. I actually believed you could do that. To me. To us. He looked at Lena, his eyes pleading. I was so consumed by the merger falling apart, by the feeling that I was failing my father's memory. When that email came, it was like an answer. It was easier to believe you had betrayed me than to believe I was failing on my own. Lena listened, her expression unreadable. She felt a flicker of pity for the broken man in front of her, but it was buried under layers of deep, profound hurt. Pity couldn't erase the memory of standing in the rain, cast out and terrified. It couldn't heal the wounds his words had inflicted. You didn't just believe it, Sebastian, she said, her voice steady and clear, devoid of the hysteria he had last heard from her. It was the voice of a woman who had been through the fire and found steel on the other side. You wanted to believe it. You needed a villain, and I was the most convenient one. Catherine watched the exchange, remaining silent. This was not her battle to fight. She had leveled the playing field. Now the future of their relationship, if any, rested on them. I know, he choked out. Lena, I am so sorry. Sorry isn't even a word for what I feel. It's a sickness in my soul. I threw away everything that mattered for my own stupid pride. He got up from his chair and slowly, hesitantly knelt on the floor before her. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve this baby. But I am begging you, please give me a chance to earn your forgiveness. Let me come home. Not as the master of the house, but as your husband. As the father of our child. Lena looked down at her kneeling husband. 2 weeks ago, she would have done anything to hear those words. Now she felt a strange sense of detachment. He was asking to come back into her home. He was asking for a place in her life. The power dynamic had been irrevocably, fundamentally altered. Get up, Sebastian, she said softly. He obeyed, returning to his chair. His shoulders slumped in defeat. Kneeling won't fix this. Grand gestures won't fix this. Do you know what I thought about when I was sitting on my friend's couch with nothing but the clothes on my back? I realized that you didn't just throw me out of a house. You tried to take my dignity. You tried to take my child's legitimacy. You treated us like we were disposable. I was a monster, he whispered. Yes, she agreed, the simple affirmation more cutting than any insult. You were, and I can't just forget that. I can't unhear the things you said. She took a deep breath. But this baby deserves a father, and I once loved a man I thought was good and kind. I don't know if that man still exists. A flicker of hope ignited in Sebastian's eyes. He does. I swear he does. I'll do anything, Lena. Therapy, counseling, anything. I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you. Lena looked at Catherine, who gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. It was Lena's decision, and she would support it either way. You can't come back to the manor, Lena said finally. The hope in Sebastian's eyes dimmed. Not yet. Maybe not ever. This is my safe place now. This is my child's safe place. She continued, you will find your own apartment nearby. You will go to therapy. We will go to couples counseling. You will be present for the birth of our child. You will have a chance to be a father. But earning the right to be my husband again, that is not guaranteed. You will have to build a new foundation with me, one based on actual trust and respect, not on grand romantic gestures and a shared last name. You will have to prove through your actions every single day that you are the man I thought I married. It wasn't the answer he wanted, but it was more than he deserved. It was a path forward, albeit a long and difficult one. Okay, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Okay, Lena. Whatever you say, I'll do it. In the weeks that followed, a new fragile normal began to take shape. Sebastian moved into a modest apartment in a nearby town. He started therapy. Catherine, meanwhile, used the evidence from the investigators to launch a full-scale corporate counter-assault. She exposed Sterling Nash's corporate espionage, leading to a massive scandal, the firing of Sienna Croft, and the German firm pulling out of their deal and reopening negotiations with a humbled and newly advised Montgomery Industries. Sebastian and Lena began their counseling sessions, or painful meetings, where years of unspoken issues came to the surface. He learned to listen, truly listen. She learned to voice her own needs and fears, something she had suppressed in her desire to fit into his world. When Lena went into labor a month later, Sebastian was there. He held her hand, coached her breathing, and when their son Nicholas Robert Montgomery was born, he wept with a joy so pure and profound, it was heartbreaking. Holding his son for the first time, Sebastian looked at Lena, who was exhausted but radiant. "He's perfect," he whispered. "Yes, he is," Lena said, her eyes on their child. She knew their story was far from over. Trust once shattered so completely could not be glued back together overnight. But as she looked at her son and at the humbled man who was his father, she felt not the bitterness of betrayal, but the quiet, resilient hope of a new beginning. She was no longer just Lena Petrov, the caterer who got lucky. She was Lena Montgomery, the mother of the Montgomery heir, the mistress of Blackwood Manor, and the architect of her own future, a future she would build not on a fairy tale, but on the solid foundation of strength, truth, and hard-earned forgiveness. That is the incredible story of Lena Montgomery. A woman who was cast out with nothing and reclaimed everything, not through revenge, but through quiet strength and the unshakable power of truth. Her journey shows us that true power isn't about wealth or status, but about integrity, resilience, and the courage to redefine your own life even when it's been shattered. It reminds us that sometimes the most unexpected allies can appear in our darkest moments, and that a person's true character is revealed not by what they have, but by what they do when it's all taken away. If Lena's journey from despair to empowerment moved you, please give this video a thumbs up to show your support. What did you think of Catherine's ultimate move? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to share this story with someone who loves a powerful tale of justice and resilience, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable real-life stories. Thanks for listening.